This video goes over some of the changes to the mod as of version 2.20. Again, you start the game the same as before, right click on the module, click start new game, and then either set up a new undefined game by laying out all the pieces, the map and the player aid and the income chart and all that, or just use a predefined setup, which is what I'm doing here since we're just going through the key features that have been added since 1.70. When you set up the game here, it's important that as you join, and as everyone joins later on, you choose the correct player color that you're going to be. The other setups, other options are Overseer, which gives you access to kind of everything. But choose your particular player color when you go in. Then when you go in, you're going to delete all the player color pieces that are not going to be used in this game. So you need to have all the players tell you as the setupper which colors they want to use, and then you delete the relevant markers. So if you just click on a color, right click and choose to delete all markers of that color, it'll delete everything. And that's just the same as it always has been. So we're going to delete some colors and set up for a 4-player game for this little demo. There's now a setup button that looks like a yellow hex on most of the setups, some kind of hex that should be easier to find. And when you click it, you choose the player count at this map, hit OK, and then there's this supply arrow thing. You can choose yes or no. No gives you the basic setup that's always in the game, but I'm going to show you yes. That's when you're going to use supply arrows. And what supply arrows are these things. These little arrows that point to the cities, and they just move the goods from the goods display to the map. It's for those of us who have trouble visualizing what's going to end up where. This is just so you can see where everything's going to end up. You can pull them all off the map by hitting the button that says Get Supply Arrows. You can send them out to the map by hitting the Send Supply Arrows button. You can toggle the transparency levels of the arrows so that they're more or less visible. There's some buttons to play with, but the main ones are to either get or send the supply arrows to sort of clean up the screen. So at the beginning of the game, once everyone's had a chance to stare at the map, you'll sit there for a while, and then when you're ready to play, recall the arrows. All the players have personal windows. I'm playing as yellow here, so I have access to the yellow. In the windows, you will find your little player mat. I'm just going to change colors or change player sides so I can drag the other players' maps out. But everyone should do this on their own. When they click on their player mat, their name gets assigned and it would appear in the upper left corner like it does in the yellow player mat. But since I'm right now not acting as red or blue or whatever color, the names are not being assigned. But I'll switch back to yellow in a moment, and then we can continue the example. But it is, again, very important for people to choose their player color. If they have joined the game but didn't choose their color, then they should do so now by clicking that sides button, choosing their color, and then opening the appropriate personal window, dragging their piece out, and then positioning it on the table somewhere. So now we also have this little train icon on the sequence of play, which is new and is used to sort of mark which step of each game turn you are in. And as you advance from step to step, you just click on the little train thing. In the issue shares, you can right click on the markers and choose how many shares you're issuing. Again, you can also just click on a marker and type the button 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 to issue the shares. And when that's done, you'll notice that as these shares are being issued, the cash is automatically being added to each player's player mat. If you're seeing some weird behavior where more cash is being added than there ought to be, it's likely that someone has created an extra copy of their personal player mat. So you just need to go delete all the extra copies, and then it should work correctly. When you are done, you click on with this phase, you click on the train icon, and now we're in the auction for player order. And I'm having these players make bids. Normally you do this on Discord, but it's handy to also type in the text field what you're bidding, and then as you pass, you pay your bid and drop your marker down to the last step of the, or drop it down to the appropriate position in turn order. The management of money hasn't changed, so if you want to spend cash or add cash to your personal stash, you just click somewhere on your player mat and then use the up and down arrows to increase or decrease how much cash you have. You can also right click and just directly set the cash to whatever value you want. That hasn't really changed. But after everyone has bid, you click the little train thing and you move on to the next step. Another new addition now is that as you select actions, you'll notice that some things are automated. For example, here yellow chose locomotive. The engines were automatically increased from 1 to 2. That's noted in the text commentary, and the marker has moved up appropriately as well. Different map modules might have different alterations to the rules or actions, and I generally will set it up so that the markers behave appropriately. After you're done with selecting actions, you move on to the next step. Building is the same, but the module does remember now who chose the relevant actions, urbanize and engineer, for example. And in this case, there's a comment in the text field that purple can build extra and blue can urbanize since they chose those respective roles. You draw the track markers out from the track window, just like you did before. I'm going to speed this next bit up here. The only things that are new that are relevant to building are that now cities are, kind of smart. When you urbanize, when a new city is placed on top of track or town disks, those tracks and town disks automatically are returned to supply. And secondly, when you put your track markers out, you can now use the track markers to immediately count your track victory points. This is shown on each track marker with dots that go clockwise around the ownership marker to show a value of up to 12. And then there's also a little number printed on the track marker disk itself. When everyone's done building, you again click the train token on the sequence of play on the right side to advance to the next step. During move goods, the player who's moving the good should select the cube that they're moving by clicking on it, then hold the shift button down and click on each disk that is being used on each link, and then finally click on the final destination city. Holding the shift key down the whole time, that's multi-selecting all these things. Then you let go of the shift button and hit H a few times. H highlights and unhighlights everything so that every other player can see which cubes you're moving, or which cube you're moving, and which links you're using. Then that player, the one moving the cube, can just simply touch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, depending on how many links they're using. Their income marker will advance the appropriate amount, and the cube will be returned to the bag automatically. Then when they're done moving, they hit escape to take away all the highlights, and then the next player can do the same thing. In this example, I'm not all the colors, I'm only yellow, so I can't do the simple thing of delivering a cube by selecting it and hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. You can still do it the old-fashioned way, highlight everything to show the route, right-click on the cube that you're delivering and hit R to return it to the bag, and then go over and increase your income manually, either by dragging your income marker forward the appropriate number of steps, or by clicking on your income marker on the income track and choosing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 buttons on your keyboard. Whenever we're choosing the buttons, you have to use the main keyboard buttons, not a numeric button. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on the main keyboard. If the active player is using other players' tracks, then they can still do the same process, but they should only key in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 of their own links that they're using. And then each other players who are getting links of theirs used should advance their own incomes the appropriate number of steps. After moves are done, we click the train token on the sequence of play to advance to the maintenance part of the turn. There are individual buttons that can be used to collect income and pay expenses and do income reduction, or you can just use the single income/expenses button, that vertical button, to do all three of those things. The app will automatically do the correct things. It'll give the right amount of income to everyone, pay the right amount of expenses, and if someone is at zero cash, then it will reduce their income until they go bankrupt. Then you could click the train token to move to the next step, goods growth and production. To do production, you can do it manually by just dragging a couple of cubes off of the goods stack over on the left. The goods chart now has a goods bag, which you can drag around, and if you right click on it, you can see that it has some options to drop a cube. You can use this to drop 2 cubes. You can use this in other games when you just need to put cubes out somewhere. But anyway, you can use either of those methods to grab a couple of cubes and put them in the goods chart. Then you're going to click the goods growth button. When you click the goods growth button, the dice are rolled, and each of those supply arrows, assuming you're using supply arrows, will be marked with the number of dice of that number that were rolled, and the cubes that are to be placed on the map ought to be highlighted, and the arrows should pop out pointing to the correct cities. If the new cities have been placed, then they too will have supply arrows that show up on the map. You do have to manually drag each cube onto their respective city. If you find that the arrows are obstructing your view of the map, you can reposition them. You can just click an arrow and drag it to a different spot. You can turn it, and using the left and right arrows, just right click on the supply arrows to see what the commands are. If you, for example, put a new city out in a position where things are obstructed, it can be handy to reposition the supply arrow to a spot that works better. Then you right click and choose to save that arrow's position so that in the future, if that city's arrow comes up, it'll come up in the same position that you just saved. You click the train token to advance to the final step, which is just clean up. Then you click that advance to next turn button to advance to the next turn, and you'll notice that the player's action selection markers have been removed except for the turn order one, which remains as a reminder for next turn. And I think that about catches us up with all the updates up to version 2.20.